All right, welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're exploring the core arguments of the Bitcoin Standard. Now, this is a book that takes a really grand tour through the entire history of human civilization, all that challenge how we define the actual value of money itself. We're going to unpack its central thesis to understand not just, a new piece of technology, but the very economic bedrock of how we value human time and effort.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you hear the word Bitcoin, what actually pops into your head? Right? For a lot of us, it's a mix of confusing headlines, wild price charts, or maybe that stock image of a physical golden coin with a B on it, which, by the way, doesn't even exist in the physical world. We constantly hear it introduced as a cryptocurrency, or a digital asset, or some revolutionary tech platform. But the Bitcoin Standard forces us to completely challenge those initial assumptions and look way past the surface-level definitions that just dominate the 24/7 news cycle.
Because let's be honest, we're usually hit with this intimidating wall of tech jargon. Blockchain, mining, wallets, private keys. And while the engineering behind all that is absolutely brilliant, focusing solely on this technical layer is exactly like looking at the gears and wires of a really complicated machine without ever asking what the machine actually does or why it was built in the first place. The author argues that to truly grasp Bitcoin, we need to focus on money, monetary history, economics, and saving. Because Bitcoin wasn't just built to be a neat piece of software, it was built to solve a very old, very human problem. To understand that problem, we have to zoom all the way out to first principles. We have to ask the fundamental question that sits at the very heart of all civilization, trade, and commerce. What is money, really? It's a deceptively simple question, right? I mean, we use it every single day. We work for it, we stress about it, we spend it. But if someone just stopped you on the street and asked you to define what money actually is, completely independent of the paper bills in your pocket, how would you answer?
Think about it. Without money, we face the classic coincidence of wants. Direct barter is just this incredibly inefficient web of trying to match exactly what you have with exactly what someone else wants. Imagine trying to trade a surplus of rice directly for a bicycle, only to find out the bicycle owner actually wants shoes. I mean, it totally halts commerce. Money was the elegant solution. It acts as a universally accepted, common bridge that just lubricates all human trade. But here's the catch. Not just anything can act as that bridge. Throughout history, humans have tried using seashells, glass beads, cattle, salt, you name it. But for a form of money to be truly useful and facilitate widespread economic exchange, it needs specific characteristics. It absolutely must be durable so it doesn't just rot away, portable so you can move it across distances, divisible for making small purchases, widely recognizable, and, arguably most importantly, scarce. Without these essential traits, trading quickly breaks down. In this definition of scarcity, it's the absolute linchpin of the whole argument. Scarcity simply means that a good cannot be created endlessly and easily. Because if a form of money can be created infinitely by literally anyone, it rapidly loses its purchasing power. Think about it. If we used tree leaves as money, people would just go out and gather infinite leaves, and a single leaf would be completely worthless. Maintaining value over time requires a strict limit on supply. This is absolutely crucial for understanding why certain metals dominated our past, and why Bitcoin was engineered the exact way it was for our future. Let's move to and see how this builds across human civilization, because it's fascinating. The history of money is essentially a story of ruthless competition across 4 distinct phases. We started with basic commodities and early metals. Then, human ingenuity standardized those metals into coins and created early ledgers. The modern era ushered in paper notes and government fiat currency. And now? Well, we find ourselves at the dawn of the 21st century, exploring digital money. In every single phase, societies organically adopted the money that best fit those core characteristics of survival. Section 1. The Reign of Gold. So, for thousands of years, out of all the commodities on planet Earth, gold won the fierce monetary competition. And it didn't win by accident. It won because of raw, unyielding physics. Gold possesses basically all the ideal traits of good money. It's practically indestructible, you can melt it down and divide it into smaller coins, and it's universally recognizable. But most importantly, it is exceedingly difficult to produce quickly. You have to locate it, mine it out of the ground, refine it, and mint it. This process made it an incredibly reliable, trustless bridge for economic exchange. Simply put, gold's supply cannot be increased at the push of a button. A king or emperor couldn't just decree that more gold magically exists.
And this specific physical limitation, this inescapable scarcity, is exactly what made gold so reliable for millennia. Because it couldn't be easily inflated, people trusted that the wealth they saved in gold today would still hold its purchasing power decades or even centuries into the future.
Section 2. The shift to government money. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is understanding exactly why societies switched from gold. If gold was so perfect, why on earth did we abandon it? Well, as global trade absolutely exploded, physically moving tons of heavy gold across oceans to settle accounts became incredibly slow, risky, and astronomically expensive. We needed speed and scale. So we shifted to paper notes backed by banks and eventually entirely to fiat currency purely for convenience. But doing this created a massive fundamental difference in how money actually derives its value. See, gold's value is derived from objective, physical reality. It is physically scarce and literally hard to dig out of the rock. Fiat, which translates from Latin to let it be done or by decree, relies entirely on government institutions, monetary policy, and public confidence. It is completely unbound by physical limits. And severing that physical constraint leads us to ask an incredibly provocative question from the source material. What happens when the supply of money can be easily expanded by monetary authorities? When money is no longer tied to a scarce physical commodity, its supply can be altered based on policy decisions, economic emergencies, or, political needs. If scarcity is the very thing that gives money its ability to store value over time, what are the long-term consequences of a system where money can essentially be infinitely created?
Section 3. A new monetary experiment.
Understanding that historical tension perfectly sets the stage for Bitcoin, not as some speculative casino, but as the next logical chapter in our ancient search for the perfect money. But before digital money could ever mimic the physical properties of gold, a massive computer science hurdle had to be cleared: the double spending problem. Look, if I send you a digital photograph, I don't actually send you the original photo, right? I send you a copy. If digital money worked that way, you could just copy and paste your money infinitely. Before Bitcoin, solving this problem always required a trusted central institution, like a bank, to maintain a private ledger and make sure no one was cheating. So the crucial point is, Bitcoin solved this exact problem without the middleman. It acts as a decentralized network that maintains a public ledger, completely ensuring you can't double spend without relying on any central authority whatsoever. And tying it all back to our discussion on gold, it enforces absolute digital scarcity. The software protocol mandates a predetermined maximum supply of exactly 21 million bitcoins. That's it. No one can push a button to print more. It brilliantly mimics the physical scarcity and unalterable supply of gold, but in a purely digital, borderless format that can be beamed across the world at the speed of light. We've covered thousands of years of human history today, from the absolute friction of bartering to the enduring reign of gold to the massive societal shift toward government fiat, and now to the invention of strictly limited digital scarcity. The Bitcoin standard forces us to step back and look at the grand scope of economic history. So I want to leave you with these questions to ponder. Could Bitcoin represent the next major evolutionary leap in the history of money? And, in an increasingly digital world, can a decentralized digital network become a true, long-lasting store of value for human civilization? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the world around you.